Pantera was a revolutionary heavy metal band and a once-in-a-lifetime musical force to be reckoned with. However, the aggression they released through their hard-hitting, in-your-face music would slowly turn inward, creating a long-standing rift that would end one of the most influential metal bands on a tragic note. How did Pantera rise from obscurity to become the undisputed leaders of metal in the 90s? And how did the Cowboys from Hell fall from grace? Keep watching until the end as we explore the rise and breakup of Pantera, from its earliest days to its dominance in the 90s until its self-implosion that eventually led to one of the most devastating tragedies in modern rock history. Pantera is widely considered one of heavy metal's most influential acts. The collective talents of Phil Anselmo, Rex Brown, and the Abbott brothers, Vinnie Paul and Dimebag Darrell, created a sound so distinctive and powerful that it would often be referred to by upcoming metal bands years later. But although Pantera is recognized as the defining metal band of the 90s, their story began the decade before. The foundation of Pantera was the Abbott brothers. Vinnie Paul and Darrell Abbott were the sons of Jerry Abbott, a country musician and record producer. Music ran deep in the brothers' blood, and they were exposed to music at a young age. Their father, Jerry, encouraged their aspirations of becoming musicians like him. Jerry bought Vinnie Paul his first drum kit, while Darrell was given his first electric guitar on his 12th birthday. The brothers' earliest influences were the popular rock acts of the 70s, such as Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Aerosmith, and particularly Kiss and Van Halen. Darrell was known to wear Kiss makeup while practicing guitar in front of the mirror, prompting Jerry to learn Kiss songs on the guitar to teach his son how to play. Alex and Eddie Van Halen were also very influential to Vinnie and Darrell respectively. Vinnie recalls that the brothers were inseparable after the first time they played music together. Soon after, they decided to form a band. Pantera officially formed in 1981, with the Abbott brothers as the duo that held everything together. After going through a few lineup changes, the band settled with vocalist Terry Glaze and bassist Rex Brown before recording their debut album. From the early to mid-80s, Pantera released 3 albums: Metal Magic in 1983, Projects in the Jungle in 1984, and I Am the Night in 1985. Jerry Abbott acted as producer for these albums. While the band is best remembered for its pummeling brand of metal in the 90s, the 80s records were far from that sound. Pantera's first 3 albums were influenced by glam metal, which dominated the airwaves at the time thanks to bands like Motley Crue, Quiet Riot, Rat, and 80s-era Kiss. The band also adopted the image of those bands and wore spandex, makeup, and loads of hairspray. However, Pantera didn't achieve the success that other glam bands of the time enjoyed. As time went on, Pantera introduced heavier elements to their sound while maintaining the glam tone and image. By 1986, Glaze felt that the band was moving in a direction that his style didn't fit in, and he departed. The band auditioned several replacements before settling with New Orleans native Phil Anselmo. Around this time, heavier records were coming out as an alternative to the pop-based metal of the glam bands. The thrash movement was picking up steam, with bands like Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth getting more attention. These proved influential to Pantera's developing sounds. In 1988, they released Power Metal, their first album with Phil on vocals. Here, it was apparent that the extreme metal influences were transforming the band's sound. Although the album went in a heavier direction, it wasn't as successful as the band had hoped. After its release, the band decided to drop the spandex and makeup and just be themselves. This marked a new beginning for Pantera as they completely eschewed the glam influence in favor of a heavier, tougher image. In 1989, Pantera signed with Atco Records, their first major label, and began working on their next album with producer Terry Date. The result was 1990's Cowboys from Hell, considered one of the heaviest records of the time and a rebirth for Pantera. The album introduced a new logo, new image, and most importantly, a mind-blowing sound that would prove influential for later bands. Gone were the cheesy imagery and lyrics of hair metal, instead being replaced by a thrash-inspired groove sound defined by Darrell's now famous guitar tone and Phil's Rob Halford meets Henry Rollins vocals. The track Cowboys from Hell and Cemetery Gates remain favorites among die-hard metalheads, with the latter recognized as one of Darrell's finest works. In September of 1991, Pantera played one of their biggest concerts ever at Tushino Airfield in Moscow for the Monsters of Rock Festival. The band joined heavyweights like AC/DC and Metallica to play for an estimated audience of 1.6 million people. 2 years later, Pantera released their Vulgar Display of Power. The band doubled down on their aggression they displayed on Cowboys from Hell to produce their most notable tracks, such as A New Level, This Love, and their signature track, Walk. At the time, metal as a genre was on a downslope. The bands from the 80s were either losing their popularity or transitioning to a more commercially friendly sound. Meanwhile, grunge dominated the airwaves, mainly due to Nirvana's Nevermind becoming a massive hit. In the midst of it all, Pantera became metal's cornerstone band, uncompromising in its approach while also managing to help the genre evolve. In 1994, Pantera released Far Beyond Driven. It was their fastest-selling release and peaked at #1 on the Billboard 200. It was also the first album where Darrell adopted the nickname Dimebag Darrell. Despite being the band's most successful album up to that point, it also marked the beginnings of problems within the band. At the time of its release, Phil was suffering from back injuries that necessitated surgery, which would keep him on the shelf for an extended period. Not wanting to sacrifice that much time while at the height of their popularity, Phil turned to painkillers, muscle relaxants, and alcohol to numb the pain. Members of the band were known to be heavy drinkers, and they were even referred to as the only band where you'd be fired if you didn't drink. But Phil took his drinking and substance abuse to another level. This began to affect his performances and voice. Further down the line, it also affected his relationship with the rest of the band. In 1995, due to Phil's worsening issues, he began distancing himself from the band. This resulted in Pantera's next album, The Great Southern Trendkill, being recorded separately. Phil recorded at Trent Reznor's studio in New Orleans, while the rest of the band recorded their parts in Dallas. On July 13, 1996, following a performance in Dallas, Phil overdosed on junk and flatlined for about 5 minutes before being revived by paramedics. Following the incident, Phil apologized to his bandmates and revealed his substance abuse issues, which shocked the Abbott brothers. This created a lasting rift between Phil and the brothers. Nonetheless, the band would continue touring in the following years. In 2000, Pantera released its final album, Reinventing the Steel. While the album featured the band still at the height of their powers, it was a different story behind the scenes. Despite Phil promising to resolve his problems in 1996, he failed and even relapsed a couple of times. The rift between him and the Abbott brothers continued to widen throughout the years. The band went on tour to support Reinventing the Steel, playing in festivals such as Ozfest. They played their final show together in Yokohama, Japan in August 2001. A planned European tour didn't push through due to the September 11th attacks. According to Vinny, Phil told the band that he would take a year off from touring following 9/11. Instead, however, Phil remained productive by working on multiple side projects. He revisited his supergroup Down, who successfully released their debut album with him back in 1995. He also formed a punk/metal hybrid group, Superjoint Ritual. Both bands released albums in 2002, with Pantera bassist Rex Brown also playing on Down's album. Phil performed for both bands on their respective supporting tours. This frustrated the Abbott brothers, who felt that he'd abandoned Pantera. They tried waiting for him to return, but as time passed, they eventually accepted that Phil would never come back. In November 2003, the Abbott brothers decided to pull the plug on Pantera. They subsequently formed a new band, Damageplan, and released an album in early 2004. In the aftermath of Pantera's split, the brothers engaged in a war of words with Phil through the media. Each party blamed the other for causing the breakup, while their bassist, Rex Brown, remained neutral. The brothers accused Phil of deserting the band, and Dimebag hinted that Phil's substance abuse issues were worsening. Phil retorted that Dimebag had a drinking problem. He also said that communication between him and the brothers had been poor, that he had clarified he wanted to take a break from Pantera, and that Dimebag's comments about his issues were below the belt. In an interview with Metal Hammer, Phil infamously said that Dimebag deserves to be beaten severely. His comments could not have come at a poorer time. Less than a month after Phil's comments, tragedy would strike the Abbott brothers, closing any possibility of Pantera's classic lineup ever reuniting. During a Damageplan performance in Columbus, Ohio, Dimebag was shot and murdered on stage in front of his brother Vinny. The perpetrator, Nathan Gale, also killed 3 more people and injured 2 of the band's staff before being shot by a police officer. According to reports, Gale was a schizophrenic fan who was upset over Pantera's breakup and blamed Dimebag for the split, hence the attack. Dimebag was buried in a Kiss casket supplied by the band he idolized growing up, along with one of Eddie Van Halen's guitars, which the guitarist himself offered. Phil was prohibited by Dimebag's girlfriend Rita Haney from attending his funeral. Phil would continue playing with several bands, including Down, On the other hand, Vinny continued his career by joining supergroup Hell Yeah, featuring members of Mudvayne, Nothing Face, and Damage Plan. Dimebag's death cemented Vinny's animosity towards Phil, which would never heal. In the years that followed, the Pantera vocalist would reach out to Vinny for a chance at reconciliation through the press. The drummer remained hesitant, even when encouraged by his brother's girlfriend Rita Haney, who had made peace with Phil years after Dimebag's murder. Vinny would sadly carry his resentment against Phil until the end of his life, when he passed away in 2018 due to heart disease. In 2022, 4 years after Vinny's death, it was announced that Phil and Rex would reunite as Pantera. The two recruited their longtime friends Zakk Wylde and Anthrax drummer Charlie Benanti to fill the spots of the Abbott brothers. The reunion was one of the year's most discussed events within the metal community. Pantera played its first show in 2 decades on December 2, 2022, at the Hell in Heaven Metal Fest in Mexico. They are scheduled to continue touring throughout Europe in 2023 and will support Metallica on select North American dates for their 72 Seasons tour in 2023 to 2024. The widespread excitement over Pantera's return is a testament to the band's long-lasting impact on the world of heavy metal. The classic lineup may have ended on a tragic note, but as they say, the music will never die, and neither will the legacy of the Cowboys from Hell.